If you don't do it, you will never do it. You know, I wasn't just talking to myself about quitting that day. I'd already made that decision, but I was talking myself into believing I deserved a better life. So I drove downstairs into the customer parking lot. I walked into human resources. I handed her my keys and I said, "This is for you. I'm leaving and I'm not coming back." And that was it. I walked back into my car, got a text from the boss. And at that moment, I blocked everybody from work. Every single number, every text, every reminder of the life that I had just walked away from. You know, the very first thing I said to myself when I got into the car and drove away, it wasn't that mantra anymore, but this time it was different. I said, you know what? It's now time for you to believe in yourself. Believe in yourself right now. You have to believe in yourself. Because quite honestly, whatever was to happen next, everything belonged to me now. The mistakes, the setbacks, the victories. For the first time in decades, my future wasn't going to be decided inside of a boardroom or in an HR review. It was actually going to be decided and executed solely by me. Okay, now don't get me wrong. I wasn't running away from anything. Honestly, I believed another opportunity would come. You know, I wasn't necessarily retiring and I wasn't giving up, but I simply believed that I could build the next chapter on my own differently. Looking back, I think I had already started redefining what success meant. I had been doing that for years. You know, this during the time where people were calling it the Great Resignation, and to be honest with you, I was a part of that. Millions of people were asking themselves the exact same question. Is this really how I want to spend the rest of my life? And for me, I had finally answered mine. Then something happened that I never expected. When I got home, a close friend happened to have stopped by, and he had already known, my husband told him, and he asked me when I walked through the door, "So how you doing?" And I looked at him and I said, "I quit today." And he said, "Nice." And then he followed up with, "Let's go to Disneyland." So we did. You know those commercials on AARP? The ones where the silver-haired couple are walking on the beach or walking down a tropical beach and they're laughing and maybe they're just skipping away in the sand. Well, my skip was a little bit different. My sand walk actually happened on Thunder Mountain Railroad, Disneyland. That became the beginning of one of the most unexpected seasons of my life. I will never forget it. Not only did we go to Disneyland, we went to Las Vegas, we took a trip to Walt Disney World and to Universal Orlando. There was even an invitation to go to Tokyo Disney, which I turned down because I felt I needed to be responsible and I needed to get really serious about finding work again. Now at that time, I thought all of this was temporary. I believed that another career was just around the corner, but something else was quietly happening to me, something much bigger than finding yet another job. You see, my friend grew up in a world that was completely different than mine. He never ever had to build a career. He never had to ask to go on vacations. He never had to measure his worth by productivity. And this was just simply how he lived his life, his entire life to this day. So at first I couldn't quite grasp it or understand it. On a Tuesday night, he would say, "Let's go," and we go. On a Wednesday, he'd be that person where he would fly out to Las Vegas, enjoy some craps or card games, and sometimes we would go with him. We'd stay a couple days and then come home on a Friday. No asking permission. Quite frankly, it was just living. Meanwhile, during this transition, my brain was still running like I had an office to report to. I woke up thinking, well, what would I be accomplishing today? Or what should I be checking on? Or what deadline am I forgetting? Even when there was nothing to do, I literally would feel guilty, like there's something I'm supposed to be doing. And that's when I realized something. See, he wasn't teaching me how to vacation right. He was teaching me how to simply relax. There's a difference between them. He showed me that my phone, it didn't always have to be a checklist. Sometimes it could just be simply entertainment. He taught me to take a walk instead of jumping into my car to run errands. He taught me to sit quietly and listen to the sounds of the city and to enjoy a slow dinner without thinking about tomorrow morning. To spend an afternoon doing absolutely nothing. And if you spent 30 years measuring your worth by productivity, doing nothing feels incredibly uncomfortable. But over time, I started noticing someone that I hadn't met in a really long time, and that person was Lisa. He even helped me to find who Lisa was. Just Lisa. Just be Lisa. You know, don't be the logistics manager. Don't be the problem solver. Not the person that everybody depends on. Just Lisa. As my life slowed down, my nervous system finally had permission to slow down too. That's when I realized how much stress I had been carrying around with me for years, maybe even decades. Even today, I'll be walking down an aisle at Target. I'm gonna tell you this. And every once in a while, these old voices come up in my head. You know those voices. I expected more. I know you're capable of more. I'm disappointed. I need more from you. You know the voices. They sound like every performance review that you've ever had. It's like being called into the principal's office even when nobody is actually talking to you. These voices, literally, they don't disappear overnight, but they honestly do get quieter over time. And I would say right now, they're pretty damn quiet. People sometimes ask me, Lisa, after 30 years, why did you go work at Target? It's because they assume it's about the job, but it's not. Target gives me something that my career never could. That's called options. You know, if someone calls me on a Monday and they say, hey, do you want to go to Disneyland tomorrow? I could just look at my little schedule. I could either post my shift or use PTO if I need to. And sometimes I can just simply say, sure. To me, that's considered freedom. That's the flexibility that I have. And it's not because I don't work, because work no longer owns every day on my calendar. My friend he actually moved out of the state. And obviously now we don't spend nearly as much time together anymore. But what he gave me really never left. It's not about the vacations that he gave me. What he gave me was a different way of seeing life. He introduced me to a version of myself that had been buried under 30 years of deadlines. You know, looking back at that Friday, I realized something. That voice saying, courage, have courage, do it now. If you don't do it, you will never do it. That voice wasn't a voice of recklessness. It wasn't something that was impulsive. And it wasn't what is known as a midlife crisis. In fact, it was an act of putting me into recovery from believing that my value simply depended entirely on my productivity. Why? Because I still work and I enjoy working, but now work simply is a separate thing that supports my life. It doesn't define it. And after 30 years, that may actually be one of the greatest promotions I have ever given myself. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody.